Thanks, Christine. I appreciate it. I just check in. Hopefully you can all hear me. I guess if you can't hear me, I'm not going to know. So I'll make the assumption that you can. My name is alanlyme, and I am a licensed clinical social worker in Georgia. I spent a lot of time in Florida. Been in Macon, Georgia for the last 4 years, working for the SAMHSA grant project here in Macon as the SBIRT clinical supervisor. I have a team of folks that I supervise at the Medical Center of Central Georgia, and we are a sister project with our co-grantees in Atlanta, working at Grady Health Center in Atlanta, Georgia. I have been part of the MINT network for almost 10 years. I took my first MI training of trainers in 2004, and then I did it again in 2006, so I'm actually a double MINT, if there were such a thing. I'm obviously not from here. I originally came from England. I've been here for 30 years. The other problem that may present is that I may say things that sound a little strange to some of you. I'm not going to be able to see your faces to know if you can't hear what I say. So please feel free to type in if you want me to repeat anything. I'm used to doing that. I've been in the States for a while, so I'm used to repeating myself when I need to. I will do my best to speak clearly. I tend to get a little excited about this stuff because when I found MI, or when it found me in 2003, I really appreciated it and really took to it, and I see the value in it. So as I talk about it, perhaps I get a little excited sometimes. I am working on my Southern accent, y'all, but I'm not getting very far with it as we speak. So welcome. So I want to do an overview of motivational interviewing as used in SBIRT. Because of my affiliation with SBIRT, I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about some particular screening procedures that we can use, and then I'm also going to talk about how different parts of MI may fit with different parts of that screening. So I like this cartoon because what I know about presenting is that it's always a challenge, and of course there's a big challenge on a webinar is that I can't see you, so I don't know if I'm losing your attention. I also know that many of you will be multitasking, as I usually do when I watch a webinar, so certainly I appreciate that you may not always be focused. I'll do my best to keep you engaged, but as you know, this is not the easiest medium to work from, but we'll do the best we can with what we got. I want to thank a whole bunch of people. I'm not going to read all their names out, but I have a couple of mentors. Steve Andrews is certainly out of Portland, Maine, has been one of my mentors since the beginning of my work with motivational interviewing. And of course, my friend Steve Malcolm-Berg-Smith in San Francisco. I acknowledge these folks. I wouldn't be here without them. In the SBIRT world, I've been blessed to have mentors such as Steve O'Neill and Dr. Paul Seal, Sylvia Schellenberg and Aaron Johnson, and of course Dan Hungerford at the CDC. And of course, all the countless patients that have taught me and us how to do this work, because they let us know when it doesn't work for them, what works, what doesn't work. So we're very appreciative. I'm very appreciative for the patients that have been my privilege to have worked with over the years. And of course, there's a couple of videos I'm going to show. One of the videos in particular is Dr. Paul Seal and Ms. Jafanda Buckner. Jafanda Buckner is one of the health education specialists that works under me. I supervise her. And the videos are available at SBIRT Online. This is a partnership with SEEKSAT, Southeastern Consortium for Substance Abuse Training Consortium here in the Southeast, that has got lots of online modules and videos that you can go on and download for free and look at your will, and I hope that you do. The guidelines for the training, like I said, it's going to be interesting. Ask lots of questions. You have the ability to type in your questions. So when you do so, I will be notified, and Chris will be notified, and we can certainly have conversations. How cool will that be? Be critical of everything that's said. Be kind. Maintain an attitude of what the heck. Jump in for as much time as you can give us. Make this your experience. This could be fun. We'll find out. Hopefully it's going to be fun. I'm going to ask you at times for one or two of you to perhaps join me in conversation. Perhaps we can do some role play on the webinar. I think that would make it a little more lively, and we can look at some of the components of MI and SBIRT and do some role play in front of this vast faceless audience and see how that works. What I'm realizing my clicker doesn't work, so I've got to do this. I like this cartoon because for me this really epitomizes why we do this work. I've experienced this. The man says the best way to achieve good health is take care of yourself, and he goes on to tell the patient what everything he should do to take care of himself. And of course the patient gets up and says, "You're right, doc, thanks." And on his way out he says, "Now I've got to find another doctor." And this is not an uncommon experience. So what I realized with motivational interviewing and the work we're doing with SBIRT is we're looking at a different way of communicating with patients so that they don't leave us thinking we've got to find another doctor or another counselor or another therapist, but they leave us thinking, that was really good, and there's some things I want to do now based on that conversation. That's what I hope to get out of this. So the nuts and bolts. The objectives for this are we're going to orient on the brief to the SBIRT interventions, screening, brief intervention, referral treatment interventions, and some of the standardized screening tools that we use in this work. We're going to look at a model of brief intervention. We're going to look at the flow model, which was authored by Chris Dunn and Craig Field and Dan Hungerford. And actually, one of the handouts that we sent this morning has that in it. You should be able to open that up and follow along when we get to it. And we're going to do a primer on motivational interviewing. Obviously, motivational interviewing is something that takes a while to learn and to really grasp. My hope for today is that there'll be some things that maybe get your attention and maybe tickle your fancy, so to speak, and that you will take a deeper look at this when you have more time. You'll find a training, if you haven't had training, and you'll actually get out and learn a little bit more about it. That's my hope. So what is the SBIRT intervention? So obviously the acronym screening, brief intervention, referral treatment. We're doing a brief screening, a universal screening. We're quickly assessing use and severity, both alcohol and illicit drugs, prescription drug abuse. The brief intervention is going to depend on the result of the screening. Maybe we'll screen some people into it. Maybe some people will be screened out of it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the screening process. My main focus is going to be on the brief intervention. The brief intervention then is a motivational interviewing based conversation. It's supposed to raise awareness and hopefully help someone's motivation towards making some sort of change if they choose to around their risky or problematic substance use. That's primarily what it's geared for. And then we have the referral to treatment piece, which is for those that score in the screenings, that maybe score in the higher ranges, the higher risk ranges, that perhaps will then benefit from further treatment. So our goal for those folks will be to refer them to a local treatment source where they might get the help that they need. So our goal is to identify and effectively intervene with those who are moderate or higher risk for psychosocial or healthcare problems related to the substance use. We really are focused on those that are using at unhealthy levels, that perhaps weren't aware of that before they had the conversation with us, and that perhaps we can spend some brief amount of time that may result in their decreased use. We know from our work here in Georgia, and it's known from the work in other states with the SBIRT grants, that this actually works. People do reduce their use over time. We have 6-month data, and we will continue to work on longitudinal studies, but we know that people reduce their use, reduce their binge drinking, reduce their drug use, that therefore hospital costs are reduced, that physicians' visits to the EC and to their physicians is reduced. So overall it's general cost savings to society overall, not to mention the money that isn't lost through people not being able to work, and through accidents and through DUIs and such. So in a nutshell, I want to talk a little bit about one of the models that we use. I'm going to review the model, then I'm going to get a little bit into motivational interviewing, and the model is going to pop back up through different parts of the rest of the presentation. So I'm going to introduce it now, kind of condensed, then it's going to come out and we'll talk about it in broader terms as we go through the presentation. So one of the things that I think is really critical with the work that we do, no matter what we're doing, no matter who we're speaking to, is asking permission. Certainly before we do the screening questions, certainly before we do any brief intervention. Ask permission, would it be okay? Would it be okay? I think this gets lost a lot of times, but this is really I think where the work begins with that very first meeting and asking permission if it's okay if we have the conversation. I'm going to assume with you guys it's okay if I have this conversation with you because you kind of signed up for it, but who knows? Maybe some of you are not so sure. I don't know. Just some things you may say, and anything that I present is just some ideas. There's many ways to do this. There's not one right way to do any of this. There's certainly some guidelines that we hope you would heed, or at least pay some attention to. But there's many ways to do this. There's not just one right way to do either the screening or using motivational interviewing. So the universal screening question, the NIAAA single question, the work we do here in Macon, this is asked by the nurses at the Medical Center of Central Georgia. When every patient walks through the front door, in triage they are asked these questions. How many times in the past year have you had 5 or more drinks in a day for a man, 4 for a woman? These, of course, are the binge drinking questions. How many times in the past year have you used illegal drugs or prescription drugs other than how they were prescribed by your physician? So we then, based on their response, we may get triggered. We may get triggered to come and do a deeper screening, and that's when we have on our electronic medical records, we have an icon that pops up for our team that lets us know we need to go and find that patient and do a longer screening. So that's how we are triggered to begin our portion of it. Some of the screening tools that are used in the hospitals here, we use the ASSIST, alcohol, smoking, substance abuse involvement screening test. This gives us a broad scope of both alcohol and drug use. It's an interesting instrument. We also, in the medical offices here at the Family Health Center, we use the audit and the DAST. There are many tools you can use. I would just suggest that you find one that works for you, or find one that your grant is recommending, and stick with it and learn how to use that one. So 3 tasks for the brief intervention. The first is feedback. We're going to give feedback on the screening tool that we use, whichever one it was. All of the screening tools will create a score based on the answers given by the patient. So we're going to offer to give some feedback based on that score, with permission, of course, if the patient's interested. The second thing we're going to do then is listen to the patient's reaction to that score and try to elicit from them what it may mean for them. And then, of course, if they decide to make a change and if the change is indicated, perhaps we're going to listen and help them figure out the options for a change. So this is the flow model. This is the flow model. You have this as a handout. Hopefully you've been able to pull it up, or at least maybe print it out. If you haven't done it yet, then hopefully you'll be able to get to it. We're going to come back to this and look at it in a little more detail. I just want to give you an overview of it before we go into the rest of the work. So there's the giving feedback piece. So the F is the feedback. No matter which instrument you use, there's going to be feedback that's appropriate for that, whether it's blood alcohol content, the audit, the DAST, the assist, quantity and frequency, how much and how often. There's going to be some ways that we can offer feedback based on whichever instrument it is. So for the audit, we may offer them in the form of the feedback. There's an acronym, of course. MI is known for its acronyms. We have many, and also the flow system has some acronyms as well. The first is range. So we have the flow system, the range of feedback in the first section, looking at the range of the score for the instrument, whichever it may be. So the audit, for example, may go from 8 to 40. The assist goes to 39. So from 0 to 40 or 0 to 39. And everyone's going to fall on that continuum. So letting them know where they fall on the continuum, asking them what they think their score might be, looking at what normal or perhaps less risky scores may be, or low risk or no risk scores may be, give them their score. We have some instruments that are helpful in that. I think I sent you one of those as well. We'll talk about that when we get to it. Show them in what category they are and elicit their reaction from them. So what do you make of that? So the acronym range, give them the range of scores, ask them what they think of it, tell them what the normal scores are, give them their score and elicit their reactions. So that's one possible way you can use this. Then we get into the L part, so we're listening for. So we're digging for change talk, and we're going to spend some time looking at change talk through a motivational interviewing lens. Again, this is just to give you a taste of what's to come. Some questions. What are your thoughts about? What are some of the things that bother you about drinking? How would you like your drinking to be 5 years from now? These are just some ideas of questions that you could use to elicit possible change talk. And again, we'll talk about change talk at more depth in a short while. Listening and eliciting, of course, not so good. The good things about the substance use, importance and confidence scales, readiness ruler. These are all things that can help us to continue to elicit change talk and continue to take a look at someone's ambivalence and see where they are with any kind of change, if it's something they're thinking about or not. And then we have the options for change. And this obviously will come after the conversation and towards the end. If a patient has any inkling that they might make a change or might want to make a change, what do you think you might do with this information? Because for many patients, the information that they're drinking at unhealthy limits, this is the first time they've heard it. So for them, just the idea that they're doing something that's unhealthy, for many of them, that's enough. That's enough of a prompt to do something differently. And for others, not so much. For others, they may have some other changes they may want to make and some other issues to work through. But for a lot of folks, just that conversation is enough to have them actually think about and create some changes in their alcohol drug use. What do you see as your options? Where do you go from here? What happens next? These are great open questions that hopefully will elicit folks to think about where they are and what they're doing, and gives them the autonomy to make changes or not make changes. It's entirely up to them. So again, another acronym. I said already we're acronym heavy, and we're gonna get through a few. So the acronym for the options is menus. Menus. Manage your use is something you like to think about. Perhaps managing your use. Maybe you could eliminate your use. Maybe you never use and dry it. Maybe you won't do anything. Do nothing. Or maybe you feel like you might seek some support. These are just some ideas again. If you're an acronym person, we have two of them now. We have range and we have menus. Of course, we have flow. And then, of course, the hypothetical. Perhaps someone's not quite thinking about it. And then there's a hypothetical question. If you wanted to make this change, how might you do it? If you decided to, if the time were right, what do you think you might do? And then, of course, if we get to move into a plan of action, how are you going to do it? How might you go about it? What would you do? So it may be that this is a hypothetical conversation because the patient has indicated that this isn't something they really do right now, but they may be indicated that if it got to a certain point, a certain level, then they would consider making some changes. And of course, we want to avoid warnings. There's no W on the flow. The acronym is stopped short of that, but we don't have any warnings. We're not going to warn patients. We're not going to tell them they've got to stop or they're going to die, or some of the things that may have been more common in other forms of brief intervention. In our SBIRT brief intervention, we're not going to warn. Now, of course, if we are physicians and patients come to us and they expect us, of course, to share our opinions, because otherwise they would come to us, it's certainly feasible and certainly possible and doable that the physician may share their concerns. And of course, we may share our concerns as counselors and therapists with someone's plan as well. Always giving them autonomy, but not warning them of their consequences. Certainly, we don't want to scare people or shame people into making changes. We want this to become their idea. And then we get to close on good terms. So we're going to SO here, another acronym. So we're going to summarize the patient's views. We're going to encourage the patient in their journey, however that may be for them. And they're going to discuss whatever agreement was reached, what they decided they wanted to do, whatever it was. So another acronym. So that we have menus, we have range, we have SO. We've got a whole bunch of acronyms here, and we haven't even been going for 10 minutes yet. Oh no, we have. Look at that, 20 minutes. So a whole bunch of acronyms, a whole bunch of stuff that you can do. This is the flow system, as I said. This as penned and authored by Chris Dunn and Craig Field and Dan Hungerford out of the CDC. And this is one that makes sense and I think is easy to follow if you choose to follow it. So getting into the MI piece, because for me, I think one of the biggest awarenesses that I had as a teacher and trainer in MI is that as I go around and talk to different groups, motivational interviewing is really helping you make known what you already know. There's much of this that you've heard of, much of this that you've already done, you've already been trained in at some level. Imagine there are pieces of this that you've been holding on since grad school. There's pieces of this kind of flying around everywhere. But being brought to this umbrella and called motivational interviewing, I think it's going to be surprising to see what is included in that umbrella. As we open this box that says MI, there's going to be some familiar things in it. So my goal, my hope is that you realize that you know a lot of this stuff already, that it's not new entirely, and that it's stuff that you know works and stuff that you have a sense is usable. My experience is through many years of training that when an organization takes on motivational interviewing, when a hospital has SBIRT folks working in the emergency departments, it's noticeable, it's palpable, you can sense it, it feels different. The atmosphere feels a little different, if you will. You can almost really sort of feel that there's a shift in the expectations from the patients, the weight that the counselors and nurses and physicians carry. It changes. And my hope is that you'll recognize some of these pieces as things that you've been doing or that you've heard of and that you know work. And we'll see how that rolls out. I like this cartoon because for me and for many of the folks that I work with, the saying on the wall, you're a failure, you're wasting your life, you'll never amount to anything, that's been a motivating technique that they've heard for much of their lives, and certainly a lot of my background is in drug and alcohol and inpatient mental health, and folks that have been struggling for much of their life have heard a lot of the negativity that some folks think is motivating. And what we realize, of course, is that it's not very, very helpful. And one of my goals is that we can shift that paradigm that says that that's at all helpful when you put someone down rather than building them up and seeing what they want to do, giving them autonomy and giving them respect and dignity that every human being deserves. So that's why I show this. Hopefully it's not something that we're doing, so not what we promote. So this is a scale. And in our SBIRT work, we use the scaling question quite frequently, and we look for things such as importance of behavior change, confidence in behavior change, readiness for behavior change. And it's certainly a way that we can get a lot of information in a pretty short amount of time that we can then use as we try to help our patients look at their ambivalence about any change and maybe step into change if that's something they want to do. So this is my first moment where I'm going to stop here and I'm going to ask somebody from the audience, the listening audience here, if there is somebody out there that would be willing to have a conversation with me here, and my question is going to be on confidence. Because if motivational interviewing is really about being a catalyst for helping someone make a change in their life, a catalyst for helping someone recognize their own internal motivation to change, how confident are you right now in your professional world that you can be that catalyst? How confident are you that you can help to catalyze someone's own self-determination to make change through conversation? So that's my question, and what I'm eliciting is somebody that's willing to have a conversation with me and let me know where you are on this continuum of 0 through 10. 0 being, I can't help anybody change anything. I can't even help myself change. And 10 being, I haven't met anybody yet that I can't help make a change in their life if they're willing to do it, if they want to do it. Where would you put yourself on that continuum?
This is Chris. Okay, at this time, if anybody would like to answer Alan's question, you can ask me to unmute you by clicking on the hand icon. that's next to your name. I'll see that, and then I'll unmute you. So let's have some volunteers.
Did you say you have a volunteer, Chris?
Let's see. Oh, I'm getting people just responding. No, I've got a couple hands up. Let's see if these work. I'm getting people who are responding through the questions box. There are 3, a 6, a 7, or 8. And let's see. I checked my. Okay, I'm on the phone. Okay, let me see this one. I can respond through the questions box. 5. Let me see. I've got a couple hands raised here, so let me see if they really mean it or if it's by mistake, which it often is. Hi, Eric. Did you raise your hand?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to speak with Alan and answer his question, please?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Erica, is it?
Yeah, well, there's 5 of us here from One Methadone Clinic. Eric signed in, but my name's Cookie. I'm talking.
Hi, Cookie.
Hi.
Welcome to my submarine.
Thank you.
So Cookie, thanks. First of all, is it okay if we talk about this in front of the 201 people that have signed up? Sorry, 203. Yeah.
Yes, sure.
Okay. So where did you put yourself on this continuum of confidence? 0 being, I've never been able to help anybody make any changes, and 10 being, I haven't met anybody I can't help.
6.
6. What does that mean to you to be a 6 on that scale, Cookie?
That I think I can help some people, but I can't help a lot of people. Probably I need some help helping people.
So you can help some, but you don't feel that you can help a lot. Why did you choose a 6? Why did you choose a 6 and not a 4 or
Well,
5?
I was kind of between a 6 and a 7, but then I would rather go lower than too high, because you might ask me something tricky.
I might, you never know. And yet you chose a 6 or a 7, but not a 4 or a 5. Why didn't you choose a 4 or a 5?
Because I know I help some people.
Yes, you have some experience. You have some evidence that you've helped some people in the past.
Yes.
Yeah, and so it's not something that you're that low in confidence because you know that you can help.
Yes.
So what, if anything, would bring you from a 6 to an 8, perhaps?
You know, maybe learning some techniques from this class.
Okay, so perhaps there's a couple of things that we might talk about that maybe would help you. I don't know.
Right.
All right. Well, we'll see if that's the case at the end, and hopefully there's some things that you can pick up that might be helpful to you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Thank you. Chris, can you mute it? All right.
Yes, I muted her again.
Thank you. So there's a couple of things that I did there that hopefully were helpful. I'm not sure how it all came out in your submarines. Certainly that's how it sounded what I was hearing. But with the scaling question, my first thing I want to do is find out, first of all, get permission. Is it okay if we do this? And then I want to make sure that I get an understanding of what the number means to you. So for Cookie, a 6 or a 7 meant that she had some confidence. She knew she could help some people, but there were some things she thought maybe she could learn. And the next thing I would do with that is to go down the scale a little bit, ask why not a 5 or a 6. What I'm doing there is I am trying to elicit some of her strengths. So her strengths are that she knows that she can do this. She's helped some people. She knows there's some things that she can do. She has some evidence that she's helped folks. And then I will ask, what, if anything, bring up 1 or 2 points, perhaps from a 6 to a 7 or an 8, with a caveat of, if anything, maybe there's nothing. Maybe she's quite happy where she is. That's okay too. But what she told me was that there's maybe some things she could pick up on the webinar. I hope so. I hope that this is worthwhile for her and for many others out there as well, that maybe could help her with her confidence in making these changes. So that scaling question, we use it, as I said, with the SBIRT work, we use it with importance, confidence, and readiness for behavior change. And it's a great way to get a sense of someone's values, someone's change plan, what someone may need to move forward, if anything. So scaling questions. So we're going to come back to that probably tomorrow afternoon to see how it fits exactly into the SBIRT intervention. So I think the most important gift we can give the folks that we work with, no matter where we're working, especially if we're working in a busy emergency department or perhaps a busy physician's office or wherever we're working with folks, a homeless shelter, that we give them ourselves, that we actually listen to what they're saying. And I'm not sure about any of you guys, but for me, I didn't think a lot about my listening skills once I left grad school and once I got past some of the role-playing I did in grad school into the real world. I didn't think much about it until I started to learn about motivational interviewing. Because if I'm not listening to my patients, if I'm not listening to my clients, then I can't help them. So the biggest gift I can give them is my ability to listen. I can't reflect. I don't know what questions to ask. I'm not sure where to go unless I'm listening. So for me, the most important thing we do is to listen to our clients. My friend Steve Berg-Smith in San Francisco gave me this and gave us this in training in 2006. The Chinese verb makes up the verb to, Chinese characters that make up the verb to listen contain the ear, the eyes, the heart, and the undivided sign. So hopefully when we're listening, we're using all these faculties, our ears, our eyes, our heart, and undivided attention. Because if we're not, there's something that we're missing. If we're not watching, if we're not listening, if we're not present, then we're not listening. And we're going to miss something. And especially today in the world of iPhones and droids and things that go bump in the night, it's really challenging for us to pay attention. I think that it's getting harder and harder. I have a 15-year-old daughter, and her attention span is about that. So maybe some of you can relate to that. I don't know. And of course, my friend Steve again sent me this picture. This was actually one of his trainees at one of his trainings that went out and got the tattoo of the Chinese character for the verb to listen on her wrist after being in his workshop for a couple of days. So powerful stuff. I don't actually have any tats, but if I did, it might look a little bit like that. And of course, what we're also doing when we're listening is showing respect. Respect for the person in front of us, respect for their journey, respect for their plight, respect for them as a human being. And if there were a song for that, I'm not sure. It might be something like that, who knows. So respect for the person in front of us, I think that's really what we do when we listen to them. So it's really key, it's really critical that we pay attention. Even if there's all kinds of things whistling and buzzing. I know in the emergency departments it's really challenging, and oftentimes we have machines going off and whistles and bells and all kinds of monitors. And I listen to the work of my team and I code their work, and sometimes it's really hard just to hear the conversation because of the external noise. So I really applaud their ability to focus and to listen. It's really incredible. So for the rest of this training, what I hope is that you show up, not just to have the webinar playing. I know that it's challenging. I know myself sitting through webinars that I often have it playing in the background while I'm multitasking. I can't see what you're doing. You can get away with it if that's what you choose, but my hope is that you kind of pay attention and show up and be present, and that you have a beginner's mind. I said in the beginning that MI is really making known what you know, and at the same time, I think for training purposes, letting go of what you know and being willing to be open to other ideas will be a huge gift to yourself and to me as a trainer. I think I'll take a quick check to see if there are any questions before I move into this. This is a kind of a didactic piece that is interesting, and at the same time, I want to check with you first before I move ahead.
This is Chris. The only question I had is somebody asked if you use peers.
If I use peers, absolutely, yeah. We use peers, not in the SBIRT work here, I've worked with training peers. I worked with the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse. We worked with both the substance abuse peers in Georgia, and I'm also working with mental health peers with Share of South Carolina, training them to do motivational interviewing in whatever capacity they see it fit. So I've worked with peers quite a lot. We have not worked with peers in this particular grant, although there are some other grants. Some RFAs just came out for peer training for this work. So yes, absolutely, peers are very, very appropriate to use with this. Hopefully that answers the question. So motivational interviewing, this is really the definition, the latest definition that I know of. It's a person-centered, evidence-based, goal-oriented method for enhancing intrinsic motivation to change by exploring and resolving ambivalence with the individual. So what the heck does that all mean? So it's person-centered. This began with the work of Carl Rogers. Dr. Bill Miller was working with some folks in Bergen, Norway while he was in sabbatical. This is the story that I've chatted with him about it and that I believe to be true. I hope it's true because I've been telling it for years. And he was asked to work with a group, and all he knew really how to do was Rogerian-style counseling, Carl Rogers counseling, client-centered, humanistic counseling. And he had some success there that they hadn't seen before. And so he took that success and did some work in Albuquerque. He worked at CASA in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He did at that time. And he did some experiments with some research with treatment as usual, with motivation, with Rogerian counseling. And he found that he got greater outcomes with Rogerian counseling than treatment as usual. And then he added a twist to it, which became motivational interviewing. The twist is adding some direction to Rogerian. And that's really what the foundation was. And he got greater outcomes, 2 or 3 times greater outcomes in his initial studies to show that this works. So it's person-centered, based on Rogerian, evidence-based. To this date, there's over 200 clinical trials that have been done using MI across the board, everything from drug and alcohol treatment where it began to the medical field, which I'm in right now, and right through to working with probation and parole, with the mental health field. I worked with school systems. I helped facilitate a training for the whole state of Massachusetts several years ago. We worked with all of the mental health counselors in Massachusetts. So it's evidence-based. It's been around for a while. It works. It's goal-oriented. It moves towards the goal as identified by the client, the patient. I'll use the word client, patient, consumer interchangeably, but the folks that we're helping, it's goal-oriented, moving towards their goals. It's a way for enhancing their intrinsic motivation, the motivation they have, the motivation that's already within. I cannot give anybody motivation, but what I can do is find out what motivates the individual and help to lift that up in the conversation. So enhancing intrinsic motivation to change by exploring and resolving ambivalence within the individual. Looking for those areas in which they feel two ways, those areas of change in which they feel two ways. On the one hand, it would be good for me to make this change. On the other hand, all these things are in my way. So we're going to explore that and hopefully resolve it, but we're at least going to explore it and see where we go with it. The spirit of MI is the spirit of collaboration, working together, working with the client, not telling the client what to do. Acceptance of the client for whom he or she is at this moment, without any judgment about who they may be, what they do. Evocation, pulling from them, using evocative questions to pull from the client what they want to do, what they hope to do, what some of their goals are, what some of their aspirations may be. And compassion for the client's play. Nothing came up. That's always fun. All right, so the spirit and MI. Spirit. The first is acceptance for the client where they are right now at this moment. The second piece is the evocation, pulling from them through questions, through our curiosity, what they may want to do, if anything. Looking at our own compassion for them as human beings, for their journey, for their plight, and then collaborating with them on where they may go, what they may choose to do, and how we may be helpful on that journey, if at all. And the confluence of these is where the MI spirit lies. This is the spirit of MI. Without the spirit of MI, it cannot be MI. Without the spirit of MI, it doesn't work. That's the piece that I think is important, that many folks don't get, is that without the spirit, it's really hard to do any of this work. So working on that is, I think, is key to begin with. Chris, I'm going to have to rely on you if there are any questions to start with, because I've minimized my bar, as you can see. So
I'm sure that's fine.
if there are any questions, I need you to let me know.
Yes, I will.
Otherwise, I'm like a steamroller. I'll just keep going. And I work for a grant project, so this just amused me, so I thought I'd throw it in there. That's not how we do things around here. We don't smoke in the office. So it's just a couple of pictures. Steve Rollnick, he collaborated with William Miller, on the first book of Motivational Interviewing. Steve is from South Africa. He met Bill in Australia and went on sabbatical and said, I've read your paper that you published. When are we going to write the book? When's the book coming out? And Bill Miller said, well, I wasn't planning on writing a book, but if you want, we can collaborate. So that first book came out in 1991. And this was Steve in 1989 when they first met, and Steve in 2012. Then I have a couple of Bill Miller. Bill hasn't changed much. I noticed that. Steve's changed a fair amount. Bill hasn't changed much, but Bill Miller and Steve, both a couple of the nicest folks you could ever wish to meet. I've had long conversations with both. Very, very nice gentlemen. A couple of the books, 1991, 2002, and then this is the new edition, came out in 2013. Just actually came out, I think, in October last year, but 2013 is dated. There's been some shifts, some changes, and we're going to talk about some of the changes from the second edition to this edition as we go through. I'm going to present lots of the changes. So motivational interviewing is a person-centered, goal-oriented intervention focused on resolving ambivalence in the direction of change, moving towards change as identified by the patient. Not a series of techniques, but it's a way of being. What I can tell you from my experience is that if you take this on, if this is something that's new for you, and you take on motivational interviewing as something you want to learn and get competent and good at, that it will feel like a series of techniques in the beginning. It will feel like a series of techniques because I'm going to ask you to start thinking about what it is that you're saying. I'm going to ask you to start thinking about what's coming out of your mouth. And for many of us, I'm taking a guess here, but for many of us, it's probably quite new for us to do that. So we'll be looking at, whether we're asking open-ended questions or closed questions, whether we're using complex or simple reflections, what we're trying to do, whether we're eliciting change talk or trying to amplify change talk. There's a thought process that's involved in it that is new for us, I believe. It's kind of like learning a new instrument or learning an instrument, period. I've been learning to play the guitar for about 30 years. Not that you would know it if you heard me play, but I get lessons every now and again, and I go practice and bang about a bit, and then go back and get another lesson. I know in the beginning, it was really a challenge. It hurt my fingers, and I had to look at my hands to see where the chords were, and it became a chore in the beginning. It was a bunch of techniques that didn't sound at all like music, but over time, after a while, it started to sound a little better, and it's been getting a little better and a little better over the course of a long time. Not as good as I hoped it would be after 30 years, but there you go. But after a while, it becomes a way of being. In the beginning, it feels like a series of techniques. So the four fundamental processes, as outlined in the 2013 book, the first is engaging. We need to engage with the patient, because if we don't engage, we cannot be of any help to the patient. And the second is focusing, looking at what it is that the patient wants to work at. And the third is evoking, looking at perhaps why they want to work on that, what's important to them about it right now, and then planning what they might do next, if anything. Dr. Miller put it this way, that the processes are somewhat linear because engaging comes first. I love the idea of shall we take this walk together. That focusing needs to come before evoking, because we can't evoke what the patient may want to do unless we know what it is they want to work on. So focusing comes next, the idea being where we're going to go. And then the next thing is looking at evoking why we're going to go there, and then perhaps planning how we're going to get there. And I thank Dr. Miller for this, and I love the idea that we're going to really send out the invitation, shall we take this walk together? We may even say that, I don't know, but certainly that's going to be implied in what we do. We're taking a journey, shall we do this together? Is that okay if I join you on this journey? Where is it we're going? Why are we going to do this? How are we going to get there? Great points. And yes, also recursive, because we may find ourselves re-engaging moment by moment. We may have to re-engage throughout the interview. Focusing is not a one-time event, especially in a busy environment. We may find ourselves refocusing, re-engaging. A doctor may come in if we're in a hospital situation or even in an outpatient clinic. Doctor may come in and we may have to step out. Doctor may come in and may want to take some blood. Nurse may come in and may want to put a Foley in, something we don't want to watch. And then we may want to step out, and then we're going to come back in and start again. We're going to start our conversation again, re-engage, refocus, and then we're going to be evoking probably at a very early time all the way through, and then check in to see how the planning may go. The four processes are interwoven, but at the same time, they are sort of stepping stones to each other. So can it be motivational interviewing without engaging? No, we need to engage. We have to engage to have the conversation. If we don't engage, we're not having the conversation. If we're not focusing, we're not really using motivational interviewing. If we're not evoking, we may not get to planning. Planning is something we may not get to. It may not be part of the session. It may not be part of the time we have together. But certainly the other pieces are critical. So it becomes MI when the communication style and spirit involve person-centered empathic listening. So when we're engaging and there's identified target, MI is not just reflective listening. It's not just going around in circles, going all over the map. There's an identified target, and hopefully we're moving towards it. Hopefully we're guiding the conversation through what we choose to reflect, what we choose to summarize. We're moving towards the target. And if we are evoking the person's own motivation, we're not giving the client motivations, we're not giving the client reasons to make a change. We're trying to evoke their own reasons and needs for making that change. So I like this slide because it really illuminates again some of the shift that's happening. I said shift that's happening in the I think the medical field and many other fields, because we're moving from a model where it was really known to give expert advice. I know I've had that experience in many doctors' offices. Of course, not since being in Macon. I have to add that as a caveat, just in case my boss is listening. But to give expert advice, we're trying to stimulate motivation. We're not trying to persuade, which the other model may have done. We're trying to listen and understand. And typically, in the expert model, the informative model, if the advice wasn't heeded, it may have been repeated, sometimes a little more loudly the second time. We're really trying to summarize the points of view of the patient. We want to promote collaboration. We don't represent authority. And we're going to move pretty much at the pace of the patient. We're going to proceed step by step. So there's a little difference there in the models.
Alan, do you want to break for a couple questions now, or do you have a better time to do that?
Chris, I'll break for questions whenever questions pop up. So if there are questions,
okay.
Absolutely.
I've got a couple. I didn't want to interfere a flow of
Oh no, please interfere away.
Okay. If and when Alan sees or uses peers, how does he feel about them doing everything except the actual brief intervention? This means giving the assessment and advice, etc.
Yeah, I haven't used peers in SBIRT, so I want to make that clear before answering the rest of it. And it really depends on a person's background and their abilities. I've known some peers that certainly have some background training that will make them perfect to do this work, and other peers that really haven't. So I think it's an individual basis. I think that this is something that is certainly can be universally trained, but I think with everything else, I have 12 people that I supervise, and we had to go through a lot of interviews to get 12 people that we thought would be appropriate, even though other folks had different backgrounds, perhaps more knowledge of the emergency department or other areas of the hospital. I think it takes a certain spirit to do this work, and it takes a certain education to do this work.
Okay. Can you use the term motivational interviewing to describe your skills as a therapist without special official training? For example, any therapist can use the term developmental psychology to describe what they do.
Right now, there's a movement to get folks certified in motivational interviewing, it's not happening yet through MINT. MINT is the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers. I think in this country you can call yourself whatever you want within reason. If there's nothing that prevents you from calling yourself MINT trained, I don't know that there's any regulation board that's looking for that, or motivational interviewing trained. You couldn't use MINT, obviously, if you weren't part of MINT. But I think right now there's a movement, there's some chatter out in the ether about maybe doing something with MINT to get folks certified. There's some other organizations that are certifying people in motivational interviewing. I would imagine that ethically, if you haven't had training in something, you wouldn't want to label yourself as being competent in it.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, I do have another one here. How does MI's approach overlap with and diverge from acceptance and commitment therapies?
Well, if I knew anything about acceptance and commitment therapy, I could probably answer that, but I do not know enough about acceptance and commitment therapy to answer that question, I'm afraid.
Okay. Clinics have rules for co-pays, no-show and late cancel fees. These issues are often treatment disruptive and speak to ambivalence. However, how far does an MI therapist continue to process this with clients who misuse services and providers' time?
Well, I'm not sure how to answer that, but I would imagine that an MI therapist, as any other therapist, would still need to put bread on the table and feed the kids. So I think you have to work within your own limits, whatever you're comfortable with. I certainly don't think that being an MI-based therapist would preclude me from asking someone to pay for treatment if that's indicated, or preclude me from perhaps taking them off my books if they didn't show up for 6 or 7 months or weeks or whatever.
Okay. And this is the last one, I think, for now, and I'll let you get back. What are some ways to use this? What are some ways to use this methodology with court-mandated clients that have a limited amount of time for treatment?
Well, I think this is a wonderful way to create relationship, and I think that's really what we're looking to do. Certainly with the SBIRT work, we get 5 to 15 to 20 minutes tops with a patient to create relationship and help them look at any possible change. With folks that are mandated, oftentimes they show up perhaps being not quite the most motivated folks to make any behavior change. I think this is a wonderful way of staying out of the struggle with them, staying out of the wrestling that perhaps goes on about what they could get. If you're typing, Chris, it's really loud through the speakers. I'm not sure if you know that.
I just muted myself, sorry.
Yeah. So train of thoughts went out the window. Oh yeah. So patients that are mandated, I think that this is a wonderful way of lowering fears and lowering any discord that may happen. We'll talk about discord as it has been known as resistance over the years. We'll talk about some of that throughout the training. So we'll take a look at some ways that we can work with folks that aren't perhaps the happiest campers. I think that answers all the questions. So I'm going to...
Yeah, there's one long one came in. I don't know if you want to do that now or get on with your webinar.
Let's do it now, and then we'll move forward.
Okay. With MI for physicians, physicians' assistants, nurses, and other healthcare professionals, is it fair to say that a part of the motivational interview should include asking the patient what barriers or restrictions they are facing with regard to changing their current health-related issues, like what is going to prevent you from making the change?
Yeah, we're going to look at some of the ways that we can elicit that. What might get in the way of this for you? If you decided to do this, what might get in the way? What would be a roadblock for you, perhaps, if anything? A couple of questions you may ask around that. So absolutely, it's absolutely something that I think is doable, and I think that ought to be done. So I'm going to take back the reins if I don't already have them. Well, I have them already. Look at that. I didn't give them up. So we'll take a look at this sort of model really the goal of MI and hopefully the flow of motivational interviewing, the first being that we want to lower any fear. Folks coming into the emergency departments, folks coming in, mandated folks perhaps to drug courts or wherever they may be, there's a lot of fear around it. It could be fear of physical health, it could be I just had an accident and now I'm going to get DUI, or I just fell off a ladder and I got a broken leg and I got work tomorrow and I've got family to feed. So our goal is to lower fear. These people are going to make me make this change. I'm going to have to make this change. I don't want to make this change. So we want to lower that fear. So through the conversation, we're going to lower fear. We're going to try at least to lower the fears of the patient by the engagement process, by being certainly non-confrontive and hopefully collaborative. But we hope to see then some increased desire to make some changes if that's in the patient's plans. We're going to listen for change talk, the desire to make a change, ability to change, reason to change, need to change. The acronym there, of course, is DARN. As I said before, MI is acronym heavy. So looking for desirability, reason, need, and then hopefully if we're working with folks over a longer period of time, in our expert work we often don't get to work with folks over a long period of time. It's usually pretty short. But it really depends on where you are and what your role is. But you may see people come back perhaps to the emergency department for something else. You may get to check in with them. We certainly see folks more than once. Some folks we've seen many, many times over the last 4.5 years. But hopefully we're going to see here's some commitment language. I want to, I will, I'm going to, I plan to. So there's commitment language, and then there's taking steps, and there's the activation piece as well, the activation language. So the back end of that acronym, front end being DARN and the back end being CATS, commitment, activation, taking steps. So we have a whole acronym of DARN CATS. How cool is that? We're going to come back to that once or twice or 3 times more before the end of the webinar. So we've got DARN CATS, desirability, reason, need, commitment language, commitment, activation, taking steps. And then we're hopefully going to see some behavior change over time. Certainly with our research or our looking at some of the data around some of the work we've done some data collection with some of our patients, and what we know is that many of them do change their behaviors over time, often as a result of just a 5 to 15 minute conversation. So we hope to see that behavior change towards health or to sustain health, whatever it means to the patient. So motivational interviewing, it assumes that motivation is fluid, it can be influenced, and it's influenced in the context of a relationship, developed in the context of patient encounter. In our conversation, we have the ability, the opportunity to influence the patient's motivation. We cannot give them motivation, but we can perhaps influence it towards their behavior change. Our principal task is to work with ambivalence and resistance, thinking again of resistance as discord. If there's a discord in the relationship, we're going to feel it. We've certainly been calling it resistance for many, many years. Now we're moving away from calling it resistance and thinking of it as discord. And discord is generally something that we, as the counselor, as the physician, as the nurse, may shift to change. And our goal is to influence change in the direction of health, whatever that means for the patient. And of course, we're working with ambivalence, and this is ambivalence. This is me and a couple of guys called Ben and Jerry. Maybe you're familiar with them. They mix some ice cream, which is awfully good. And the doctor says to me, Alan, you need to lose 20 cholesterol points and 30 pounds. Or maybe it was 30 pounds and 20 cholesterol points. I don't remember what it was. I wasn't listening. Whatever he said. And then there's Ben and Jerry's. So I know that I've got to lose weight, lose cholesterol, and Ben and Jerry's is in my freezer. I don't know how it gets there. It leads into the grocery, into the car at the grocery store, and it winds up in my freezer. And every now and again, I find myself with a pint and a spoon, and a memory of my doctor saying cholesterol fades into the distance. So we all have it. We all have it. We all have ambivalence, and no matter what behavior change we're thinking of, or that we're not thinking of, in my case, we have ambivalence about making that shift or that change. It's normal for us. We feel 2 ways about it. We feel on one hand that a change would be good for us, and that we don't. Most of our patients that are drinking at unhealthy levels may have some history already of incidents that have happened that make them more aware that perhaps, yes, indeed, they should make some changes, and they're not making them for whatever reason. This thanks to Dr. Thomas Fries for this slide. All change contains ambivalence, and we go through all these emotions about change before we get into it. I would dare say that each and every one of you has something in your life that if you've made a change in it will be healthier for you, maybe you'll be happier, who knows, but that you haven't made a change yet. So just as an experiment, obviously I can't see your faces or your hands raised, but I'd like you to think of something in your own life that if you made a change would be healthy for you. So think of something that you have ambivalence about, you haven't changed yet, but if you know that if you made a change, there'd be something about it that would be healthy. Maybe you would be physically healthy, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, who knows. But think of something in your life that if you change would be healthier for you. And what I'd like you to do is think about how long you've been thinking about this. How long has it been part of your thought process that you keep putting back in the back of your mind? And then think about, so here's this guy, Alan on this webinar, and if I say to you, what I want you to do is to make a decision about where you want to go with this. I don't care where it is, what you choose to do. Make a decision right here, right now, 3:10 on Monday afternoon. What day is it? 29th of April, 2013. Make a decision right now what you're going to do with it. And at the end of the webinar, you cannot change your mind. And I would imagine if I could see your faces, I would see some eyes rolling, some people looking up and eyes getting wider. And what generally happens is that people react and respond to this because when I lean into your own ambivalence about making change, when I lean into it heavily one way or the other, it doesn't matter which way, by leaning heavily, what comes up generally is fear, anxiety, and we call that resistance, right? But I think it's really discord between what my goals are and what your goals are, because if you wanted to move into change, maybe you would have had that conversation already. I just push the envelope a little bit. So ambivalence is normal. It's part of what we do. Our goal of MI then is to create and amplify discrepancy between present behavior and broader goals by creating cognitive distance between where we are and where one wants to be. So we're going to work with our clients, our patients, on where they are right now and what they see for themselves, where they want to go with this, what they want to do with their lives, perhaps. So many questions we've asked around that. So it kind of looks a little bit like this. You know, when you're this on the left and you want to be that on the right. If you know Brad Pitt, don't tell him I do this. I'm pretty sure he could kick my butt if you wanted to. Don't tell Angelina either. But there's dissonance between where one is and where one wants to be. So just ways of thinking about it. Underlying assumptions with MI, the first is that we're going to really work from a place of acceptance that the clients, the patients are right where they're supposed to be, with acceptance for them for who they are right now. Whoever shows up, however they show up, we're going to accept them for who they are. That each patient, each client has autonomy and choices. Even the mandated clients have some choices and some autonomy. They can toe the line, they can follow the rules, they can do whatever it takes to get their license, their liberty, the house, whatever it may be, back. Or they can buck the system and do other things that will increase the amount of time that they're without life, liberty, or whatever it may be. Less is better. This refers to the amount of airtime. If I'm doing all the talking in a session, it's more about me than it is about the client. So I want the client to talk more than I'm talking. I want to get from the client their own ideas about what they could do, if anything, to change. Certainly before I offer them any of the pearls of wisdom that I carry in a bag on my belt. We all have them now, come on. If I offer them the pearls of wisdom, before I've taken the time to elicit from them what they've already done, or what they've already thought of, what they've already heard of, then I'm going to fracture that relationship. I want to make sure that whatever I do is to continue to build the relationship, continue to build the engagement. Michelangelo belief, no, I wasn't there, I'm not that old. You can't see me, but I'm not that old. But when the artist Michelangelo created the statue of David, you know what the statue of David looks like, right? Yeah, like this, that little red square in the middle. That he was asked, how did you create such a beautiful statue? And what he said anecdotally was, I didn't create David, he was in the marble already. I chipped away the excess until he emerged. So the idea of chipping away the excess, of helping our clients, helping our patients to emerge from the muck and mire of their lives, whatever it may mean for them. I like that idea. Ambivalence is normal. We spoke of it as it referred to our own ambivalence. Mine, of course, is Ben and Jerry's, and cholesterol, and weight. But it's normal. It's a normal part of us. Every decision we make has some ambivalence about it. Confrontation, the first time I heard this, I wanted to gag. I hated this word, but you know what? It really fits what we do, because we do confront behaviors gently. We do confront behaviors through our reflections, through our questions sometimes. It's done in such a gentle fashion, it doesn't feel like confrontation. It's conversation. That's all it is. Keeping non-judgmental, keeping our own judgment out of it, keeping our judgment out of the equation. It is challenging for many of us because we're judgmental beings. This is what we do. It protects us. This is a survival mechanism. And yet in our professional work, we need to keep that judgment out of the room as much as we can. Change talk, we're going to listen for. Change talk, desire to change, ability to change, reason to change, need to change. Commitment to making that change, activation and taking steps. The acronym, of course, darn cats. Looking for that. And the writing reflex. The writing reflex is our desire as healthcare practitioners to make it right by telling our patients what to do, our clients what to do, so they will take on their own lives and hopefully live a better life based on our belief that we know what's best for them. So it could look a little bit like this. We'll watch this video clip and then we'll take a couple questions and see where we are in time. So I'll set this up. This is me doing a role play. Hopefully it works out. And the thing I like to look for is the many ways in which I am not MI compliant, in ways in which I am not following what I know about MI, and in how my writing reflex, my desire to make it right for the patient, shows up big time. My name is Clark. My name is alanlyme. Dr. Seal asked me to talk to you about your drinking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he said that you filled out the form and that you came to him for some medication for your stress, but that you're really concerned about your alcohol consumption before he made any prescriptions for you. So let me see that form, please.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, well, it says here that you drink 4 more times a week and that you have 1 or 2 drinks and that you go over that limit on a fairly regular basis. That's too much. That's too much. I mean, I imagine that he's already told you that he can't prescribe you anything unless you do something about this drink.
Okay, I'm really confused. He did want me to come and talk to you. I'm just not real thrilled with the way this is going.
Well, I'm sure you're not, because anybody that drinks at these levels isn't going to be thrilled talking about the drinking with a professional like myself. What we know is that if you continue to drink at this rate, you're probably going to wind up drinking more and more, and I imagine that's his concerns.
I don't think I was drinking that much. I mean, 1 or 2 glasses of wine
how big
a
is the
night.
glass? I mean, this is a typical glass, which is 5 ounces of wine. But what I know is that most people drink a lot more than that. So
Well,
I'm pretty sure that your glass is bigger than that, wouldn't you say?
you're not in my household. You don't know what I drink.
Yeah,
It's about that size, maybe a little
I've
more.
never been in a house where they have these thin glasses. That's only a restaurant. Most people have tumblers. I imagine that's why I find out with your cupboards.
No.
Well, anyway, so what he said was that you came to him for some kind of benzodiazepine, something for anxiety, and we can't prescribe anything like that once you're drinking at these levels. So we need you to stop, or at least cut back to reasonable levels, which for you would be no more than 3 drinks in one setting, which you're drinking over that now, or no more than 7 drinks in 1 week, which you're well over right now. So if you can agree to that, then perhaps he can make that prescription for that. I can't promise that either. But that's certainly one thing. The other thing you need to do is to read this, take this pamphlet and read it, and you'll see in there that it tells you about limits of alcohol. I think you'll find that if you can stick to that, you should be okay. He may be able to prescribe the medication. I'm not sure, I can't promise. But if you do have problems, and I suspect you may have problems coming back to those levels, then we can make a referral for you to a counselor to come talk about your increased drinking. So, any questions for me?
No questions at all.
All right, well, thanks. And I told Dr. Seal that you came in and that you were reasonably compliant. You said you followed through.
You tell whatever you want.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I may not have done so well on the engagement piece there. What do you guys think? I'm not sure. So based on that intervention, how willing do you think this patient would be to change her drinking or reduce her risk as a result of this conversation? Now, of course, I can't see your hands, but I would imagine that most of us are in this region down here, certainly where I would put that, maybe even over here somewhere to the left of the screen, but you can't get there from here. So not a very successful intervention. A couple of things I did use, there's always still, but a lot of people get mad when I point out how dumb they are. I'm just trying to be helpful. I don't want people going through life. The problem is I'm kind of like a doctor. Yeah, sorry, doctors. But that's what we're trying to work against. So everything I was in that video is sort of anti-MI. And I think to some degree it's not so different than a lot of us have experienced. I know that I've experienced that. I was channeling one of the doctors that I've seen in the last 5 years, and I sat there and did that. It was fun to do, but it was not MI. So to avoid the idea that we're going to get into this power struggle, we really need to let go of the outcome. It was really my persistence that had her sit back and fold her arms, and I love the end comment, you can tell them whatever you like, and with a sort of flip of the head. So I was in a power struggle with the patient. That's not what we want to do. That's certainly not our goal. We want to do whatever we can to avoid that. Because what happens is that the patient comes to us, they've got all kinds of things going on. Maybe they've got some relationship problems, legal problems, maybe they're out of work. Along comes us, and we do our screening, and we want to talk about substance use disorders, perhaps, and it doesn't really fit the patient's idea of where they are or what they want to talk about. And what ends up happening is we wind up chasing the patient around verbally, hopefully not physically, and we're left with our substance use disorder theory and no patient. So we need to find a way to bring the patient back into the conversation by tying perhaps some of their relationship or legal problems, or they're out of work, or the reason they came to the hospital or the physician's office. We want to find a way to tie that into perhaps some of their substance use. And without the screening, of course, we can't do that. So hopefully that's part of our plan here. When we listen to our patients, they're going to feel understood. They're going to want to talk more. They're going to come back. They're going to be interested in what we do. When we don't listen to our patients, they're going to become angry and agitated. They're going to become defensive, discount what we say. Everything you just kind of saw in that video clip, we're going to see that in our patients. So we have the ability, through how we react and interact and what we do and what we say, to either create relationship or fracture relationship. Hopefully, if we're working through our MI lens, we're going to find ways to engage patients so they can take on their own reasons and needs for behavior change without us being so over the top as I was in that video clip. Of course, it's always useful to clarify what one drink is. You saw me doing that with Ms. Clark. I asked her what a drink was. Of course, I argued with her about what she told me, but it's always useful to clarify that. One of the things I did use in the clip was an intervention card, which I have sent as part of the package for this presentation. So hopefully you received the intervention card, and we'll talk more about how to use that later on in the presentation when it shows up. Let me see. This may be a good place for us to take more questions, Chris, and to perhaps stop here for the day.
Okay. Let's see. Somebody said that the patients, the clients won't come back because they relapse. He said, we're not in control even with the best MI technique.
Right. We absolutely, we're not in control. We can't control what patients do or don't do. What we can do is create relationships so that if patients do relapse, they remember us as being the person that they could talk to, that didn't push them into doing things they didn't want to do, didn't push the envelope with them too hard, that perhaps they'll come back and continue the conversation with us.
And then there's one other question, comment. How will MI help my work with DOT mandated clients? Their motivation is keeping their jobs.
Right, so motivation is there, so there's some motivation. So obviously we work within the parameters of our our shingle, whatever it says on above the door where we work, we have to work within those parameters. So for a DOT client, there's certain hoops they're going to jump through to get their licenses back, and that's their choice if they want to do that or not. So hopefully through MI we can create relationship to where we can help them achieve that goal. The goal may not be to stop smoking pot or stop drinking, maybe to get the license back, but certainly for now, for this period of time, they have to come up with more creative ways to get through the criteria that's needed for them to get the license back, which will involve stopping smoking and stopping drinking, at least for this period of time. And whether they commit to that and continue that in the future is not really up to us, but hopefully there's some things that we can do in our intervention through our conversation that will elicit or illuminate their own reasons and needs, motivation to maybe keep on that path once they get on it. Who knows? I did want to quickly just show the card that I had in my hand in that intervention, even though I didn't use it very well. Is this? This comes from CSAT, the Southeastern Consortium for Substance Abuse Training. This is part of a grant that we're also working here in Macon with some local physician groups out of Anderson, South Carolina, and Wake Forest. So this is a card that is available to you. It's sent to you. You can use this if you like. It gives you some tips and tricks, things you might do to focus on to say in your SBIRT intervention. So one side has the standard drinks. It has the pyramid, the risk pyramid for both the audit and the DAST. It has the healthy limits for men and for women. It has the screening questions up in the top. It has a ruler down here, 0 through 10. So you can use this for importance, confidence, readiness, whatever you want to use it for. You can then use any of these prompts, if you will. And the beauty of this is that you can take this. I put it on the. It should have been sent to you in both publisher. I think Chris also put it into a different format. But if it's in publisher, then you can put your own logo in it. You can put your own state logo. You can put your own telephone number, whatever you want to put in it. You just ask, please, that you keep CSAT on it somewhere, that you acknowledge that this came from us. This obviously is stuff that's come from grant-funded different cohorts. We got part of this from Oregon. We got part of this from Washington. So there's many cohorts before us, and we acknowledge them as well. We ask that you continue to do the same, if you would. So just kind of to wrap up, Chris, do we have any more questions?
Yeah, a couple, but if you want to wrap up, and then we'll do those when you're finished.
No, I'm done. I think that's fine. We're going to get today. I'd love to answer any more questions you may have.
Sure. There's a comment here. What I like about your example MI demo is that it conveys how important it is to invite the patient into one space, respectively to allow him or her their own space, to create an overlapping commune space that one can share. Now here's a different question. Did the moderate drinking table change? I thought the moderate intake for women was 1 glass of wine, 1 beer, and for men 2 glasses of wine and 2 beers.
Well, the table that I've been working with for the last 4.5 years, and quite honestly, prior to coming to SBIRT, I didn't know there were moderate limits. I thought the only thing you had to do was drink responsibly, and who knew that there actually were limits. So it's no more than 3 drinks, no more than 4 drinks for a man, no more than 3 for a woman. But it's the weekly amount. So it's 14 in a week for a man, which actually is the same number as your 2 drinks per day, or it's 7 drinks in a week for a woman, which is no more than 1 drink per day. So those correlate. It's just the daily amounts that are different. So in the NIAAA and the World Health Organization's guidelines, it's the 4 for men, 3 for women, 14 over a week or 7 over a week. So part of that is definitely different. I'm not sure where the difference came from.
Okay. Somebody said they wrote, you mentioned an SBIRT convention. When is this?
I don't remember mentioning an SBIRT convention. I'm not aware of an SBIRT convention. I know that the grantee meeting happens usually once a year in Maryland, up in D.C. I'm not sure of an SBIRT convention. I know that I've done lots of one-day trainings around the country. SAMHSA and JBS have done that over the last several years. I'm not sure of any coming up in the future, but I imagine they're out there. So I would probably check the SAMHSA website and check in with JBS and see what they're doing.
Okay. Okay, and I think that's it.
Well, thanks everyone for hanging in. I hope that there was something useful for you, and I look forward to picking up here tomorrow and finishing up our brief trip through SBIRT and motivational interviewing. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Alan. And for those who came in later or didn't see my response to a question, after the webinar tomorrow, after part 2, you will receive an email from GoToWebinar that will include the evaluation. It will include a CEU order form and also the PowerPoints to this session and for session 2. Both sessions are being recorded and will be at the IRETA webinar library website, and you will get that information after tomorrow's session 2. So thank you all for joining us. I will sign out now for everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow at the same time this started.